Welcome back to Storytime. In today's episode, we're going to be continuing our reading of Machines and Men. But before we jump into it, I just want to give a quick reminder. If you like this program, you can go ahead and hit that like button, and for more videos like this, subscribe for more Storytime every week. Also, this is a community effort, so if you have a short story that you would like us to review, you can do that through our Creant World Reddit at r/Creant World. Because, big news, guys, we're actually coming quickly to the end of this segment, the Machines and Men. So, without any further ado, let's jump into Machines and Men. Chapter 18. Breaking up is still hard to do. Stephen and Meg walked round and round the little courtyard behind Meg's apartment building in the light of the electric lamps. It was a fairly warm evening, though Meg still had on her customary bulky sweater. They walked in silence for a bit while Stephen gathered his thoughts, Meg looking at her shoes, and didn't meet his eyes. "I wanted to apologize, Meg," he said finally.
"You have. Several times,"
Meg said with a hint of annoyance.
"Sleeping with me was a mistake. I get it."
"No, it's not that," Stephen said, turning to face her. "I wanted to apologize because I didn't know what I wanted. I thought I did, but I was wrong."
"What do you mean?"
Meg asked suspiciously. Stephen blew out a sigh. In a way, this conversation was more difficult than the one he had had with Becky. There, at least, he had known where he stood, but here he was in uncertain waters. Even so, his heart was telling him that this was the right thing to do, so he pushed on. "I thought I was tired of women, of all the mind games and machismo, and I was fed up with all the hassle of relationships, all the drama in that, you know?" Meg nodded. She understood that feeling well enough. She had had her fair share of one-sided relationships before. How often had she wished that some dashing prince would come and sweep her off her feet? But the truth was that in the real world, very few charming princes really existed, and it was best to just accept that people were flawed and see the beauty in that. "When I constructed Vera, I thought she would be my perfect girlfriend, and for a time she was, but Meg, she's not my girlfriend. She's not even a girl, she's a robot. And no matter how much I wanted her to be real, she never will be."
"I don't understand what that's got to do with me, though,"
Meg said in a confused voice. "You helped me realize that even though women are difficult sometimes, like really difficult."
"Yeah, women are bitches,"
Meg said with a smirk.
"That's why I prefer men."
"Yeah, well," Stephen laughed. "I realize that when you're with the right woman, it's worth the headache sometimes." As they walked, Stephen led Meg to a low stone bench and sat down. She looked up at him, blushed, and tucked her hair behind her ear. She suspected she knew where this conversation was going, and mentally she crossed her fingers.
I'm sure you'll find a girl that's worth the headache,"
Meg said, flushing even redder. "I think you're right," Stephen said, feeling butterflies in his stomach. I was wondering if maybe you'd like to take a crack at it." There was a pregnant pause as Meg squirmed a bit on the bench. On the outside, she was experiencing a full-body blush, but on the inside, she was dancing up and down and celebrating.
"We work together. Won't that cause some tension in the office?"
she said, fidgeting and tucking her hair behind her ears again. "Maybe," Stephen said with a smile, leaning towards her.
"And what about Vera? What are you going to do with her?"
Meg asked hurriedly as Stephen leaned closer. "I'm giving her to Andy. I'm going to go talk to her tonight so I can let her down. I'm not looking forward to it, but it's something I have to do."
"You're actually choosing me? Over her?"
Meg asked in astonishment, unable to grasp the concept that someone would turn down the gorgeous Vera for her. "Yeah," Stephen said, looking at her intently. "If you'll have me."
"Well, okay,"
Meg said, leaning forward to kiss Stephen on the lips. Stephen accepted the kiss and felt a warm feeling of comfort and joy spread through him. This felt right to him. At last, he felt like this was right. It was like when you wear someone else's shoes. They might fit, but they always felt odd. When they broke from the kiss, Meg sighed and snuggled up against him.
"You're really romantic. Anyone ever tell you that?"
Meg asked with a smirk. "Not recently. Recently, I've been sort of a fuck-up and an idiot. But I want to change that," Stephen said, giving her a little squeeze before blowing out a sigh. "I suppose it's time to go face the music with Vera."
"Do you want me to come with you?"
Meg asked hesitantly. Stephen laughed and shook his head. He appreciated the offer, but something told him that this was something he had to do himself. He was Vera's creator. She was imprinted on him. This task was his and his alone. He felt guilty that he'd ever put her in this position to begin with, that he couldn't be the man she deserved. But nonetheless, this had to be done. He felt it in his heart. Stephen pulled up in front of Andy's apartment and saw that the lights were still on. He wasn't surprised by this, since Andy was always staying up to the small hours with his work. Stephen grimaced, but got out of the car and went up to Andy's apartment. Vera and Andy were at Andy's desk. Vera was taking dictation as Andy, sprawled out on the bed, talked. Vera's fingers flew across the keys with a speed that could never be matched by any human secretary. Every syllable was matched by the typing of the robot. Stephen sighed as he watched Vera at work. She really was so lovely, even when she was dressed casually. When she saw him, Vera immediately jumped up, hurried over to him, and hugged him. He patted her on the head wistfully, brushing her hair. "I missed you," Vera purred into his chest. "I know you did, Vera," Stephen said quietly. "Can I talk to you for a moment, in private?" "Of course," Vera said warmly, without hesitation. Stephen led the way down to his car and sat there for a moment. "Vera, I want to tell you, first of all, that I have nothing against you. You've been everything I could have asked for, and I mean that. You have never given me any cause to be angry with you, and I'm so sorry for the way I've been treating you recently. I do love you, Vera, and part of me always will, but I need something more than what you can give me." Vera's eyes widened as she began to realize what Stephen was saying. She clutched desperately at his arm, as if trying to actually hold him with her. "Stephen, please, don't do this. I love you. I need you. Without you, I don't know what I'll do. Please, if you want me to change, I can change. I can be whatever you want. Please don't leave me," she pleaded. It was breaking Stephen's heart to hear her pleading with him. Not for the first time, he wished that he could be the sort of man to accept her love. He wanted so hard for her to be a real woman. If he could rewrite the universe and give her a history and parents and a backstory, he would make her a real girl and he would marry her in a heartbeat. But things were only as they were, and not as they could have been. Of the saddest words of tongue or pen, the saddest of these, what might have been. "I want to be honest with you, Vera," Stephen said commiseratingly. "It's not a question of trying harder or doing anything different. The problem isn't with you, it's with me. I have tried to accept your love, to let you be good for me, and you have been. You've been so good to me, Vera. But what I want is not something that you can change, and I wouldn't want you to have to." "What is it? What do you want?" Vera said with intensity. "Vera, really." "Please, just name it and I can do it. I'm sure I can." "I want you to be human. Can you do that?" Stephen snapped irritably, though he immediately wished he hadn't. There was a long pause, and Stephen could see that Vera was shocked by the realization that she wasn't human. She sat quietly, her luminous eyes darting back and forth as she struggled to come to grips with the truth that faced her. Stephen took her hand in his, and she hardly seemed to notice. "Vera, I'm so sorry," Stephen breathed. "What am I?" Vera asked in a small voice, her eyes still unfocused. You're a robot, Vera. I designed you to be my perfect woman, and you have been, really, but you're not a woman, no matter how much I wish you were." "So, I'm programmed to love you?" Vera asked in a voice that said that if she were capable of it, that she would be crying. "Is that why I feel like this? Why it hurts so much for me to lose you?" "Yes," Stephen said, feeling his own heart breaking and the sadness in her voice. "And you want to be with a human, not a robot. That's why you're leaving me?" she asked, her voice full of despair. "Yes," Stephen said again. Vera turned to face him, pleading written all over her face. "Please deactivate me. I can't live without you," she begged. Stephen was taken aback by this. He hadn't considered the consequences of this conversation as being so serious. Vera was basically asking to die. It horrified him to think of killing her. He wasn't sure he could bring himself to deactivate her. He just wanted to break up with her, not destroy her. "Vera." "Please, Stephen. If what you're saying is true, and I really am a robot programmed to be with you, if I can't be with you, then there's no point for me to exist. Why should I want to go on living without a purpose?" Put that way, Stephen had to admit she had a point. She had been designed to love him, to please him, to be his dream girl, and now that purpose was gone. The very thing she had been designed to do had been taken away. She was unnecessary, outmoded, superfluous, and the knowledge of that must be devastating. At the same time, was it right to black her out? Surely she could find another purpose for existing? Stephen hated the idea of killing Vera. He was sure he couldn't bring himself to do it. He looked at her again, her lovely face showing fear and sadness, and he knew he couldn't do it. He could never destroy Vera. She was a part of him. She was his love, the innermost desires of his heart. To kill her would be to kill a part of himself, and he just couldn't bring himself to do it. Vera, don't give up, he pleaded. I know it seems hopeless now, but you have so much that you could still do. There's so much you haven't experienced. You don't want to throw that away, do you? I know you're feeling abandoned right now. Believe me, I've been down that road before, but time will make it better, I promise. I still really love you, and I want you as my friend, Vera. I don't want to lose you either. Please believe me.
If that's true, why are you leaving me?
Vera asked.
Stephen, I'm so confused. You say you want to be around me, but you also say you're leaving me. Which is it?
I still want you as my friend, Vera, just not my girlfriend, Stephen pleaded with conviction. He had to make her understand.
No, please. I can't bear it. Please don't ask me to watch you be with someone else, Stephen. I can't stand it. I was made to love you. I can't stop myself doing it. Please deactivate me.
And there it was. Stephen felt he had come full circle. How often had he himself watched as someone he cared for was in the arms of another? Robots couldn't feel jealousy, but they could feel abandonment, it seemed. He knew that feeling all too well. The feeling of helplessness that was the result of watching someone you loved be with someone else and not being able to do a damn thing about it. On the one hand, you wanted them to be happy, even if that meant they weren't with you. On the other hand, you did want them to be with you, and no one else. Stephen couldn't see any way around Vera's request, but the idea of killing her tore him up inside. Then an idea occurred to him, and he turned to Vera with a serious look. I can't deactivate you, Vera. It would really hurt me to shut you down forever. I'd miss you so much. It would cause me serious mental harm. He hated having to bust out the Asimovian laws, but it certainly was the only way to talk Vera out of killing herself at the moment. It worked. At his words, Vera's expression became fixed, and then a look of concern and worry floated across her features. She hung her head and looked ashamed. The first law stated that no robot could do harm to a human being, or through their inaction allow a human to come to harm. The idea that her destruction would hurt him was overriding her own personal feelings. It was hardwired into her brain. It felt like a dirty trick taking away Vera's free will, and Stephen hated himself for doing it.
I'm sorry,
Vera said in a tiny voice.
I didn't want to hurt you, Stephen. Please forget what I said.
He smiled and pulled her into a hug. Thank you, Vera. I know it hurts, but it will get better, I promise. Stephen walked Vera back up to Andy's apartment, gave her a goodbye hug. The joy he had felt earlier when Meg had agreed to be his girlfriend was completely gone now. He felt terrible for what he was doing to Vera. He wished, not for the last time, that it could be otherwise. But he couldn't hide from his own feelings. The light had gone out of Vera as well. She was very quiet, hanging her head, her eyes very far away. She said goodbye to Stephen, forced a smile, but the moment he was gone, she sank to the floor. Andy hurried over to her with a worried expression on his face. Vera was unresponsive, her eyes a million miles away, her limbs slack and limp. Even though her eyes were open, there was no spark of intelligence behind them. Andy hurried over to Vera and tried to help her up. She was dead weight and surprisingly heavy, so moving her was very difficult. Andy peered anxiously into her eyes, which, although they were open, were unfocused and dull. Andy tried snapping in Vera's face and waving in front of her eyes, before realizing that as a robot, such actions wouldn't have worked anyway. Vera, are you all right? Andy asked, shaking her limp form.
No,
was the only response in a tiny, faint voice. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed that episode, hit that like button. And for more episodes like this, you can go ahead and subscribe for more videos every week. Until then, see you next time.